killer CEOs, how climate change became big oil's biggest crime. And, I started out by pointing out the public citizen would like you to know that there are killers among us. They wear $2,000 suits and travel in private jets. They're unbothered by the TSA or the teeming masses. Their children attend the finest universities in the world. They vacation on private islands and yachts. Many earn more in a day than most Americans take home in a year. And their positions ensure that their heirs will never have to work a day in their lives. Their fortunes, though, are the result of poisoning you, me, our children and grandchildren, every other living thing on Earth, and destroying the temperature stability of our atmosphere. And this week, they are responsible, in part, for billions of dollars in losses, numerous deaths, and thousands of shattered lives in Southern California. I'm speaking of course, the fossil fuel industry executives and the oil industry executives in particular. Illegitimate President-elect Trump is trying his best to cover for them, claiming that the fires ripping through California are the result of incompetence by the governor or the mayor. And in fact, one of the biggest lies that has been promoted, that was even repeated this morning on MSNBC, is that Karen Bass and the Democrats who run Los Angeles cut back on the budget for firefighting. There was a proposed budget that had cuts for firefighting. And it was in response, actually, to a federal demand for, it's a whole long story, but that budget never got passed. And the budget that did get passed had a $40 or $50 million increase in the firefighting budget. But, don't tell Fox News that, or for that matter, MSNBC this morning, Joe Scarborough, because the Republicans got ahead of this and they started pushing out that proposed budget that never got passed, as if that was the budget. And the media is largely going along with Trump's charade. Very rarely do they even mention climate change. And I have not once heard one word about the role of the fossil fuel industry in all this. Have you? But these fires, that's like a TV news person saying, well, a United jet crashed today and 150 people died. Gee, I guess, crap happens. In other news, no, you'd get an aviation expert on and you say, well, does this look like pilot error? Or did Boeing forget to put bolts on the door again? What's going on here? You want to find out, how did this happen? What caused these fires in Los Angeles? Well, fires at this time of year in Los Angeles area are not anything new. But fires and winds like this are. And this is a measurable and was predicted consequence of climate change. In fact, it was predicted in 1959 by Edward Teller in a keynote speech to the American Petroleum Institute and the Columbia Graduate School of Business. And he started talking about carbon dioxide. He said, it transmits visible light, but it absorbs the infrared radiation, which is emitted from the Earth. Its presence in the atmosphere causes a greenhouse effect. It has been calculated that a temperature rise corresponding to a 10% increase in carbon dioxide will be sufficient to melt the ice cap and submerge New York. All the coastal cities will be covered, and since a considerable percentage of the human race lives in coastal regions, I think that this chemical contamination is more serious than most people tend to believe. That was 1959. That sent the oil industry off on a search for, is Edward Teller right? And sure enough, a series of studies, the most famous was published in 1968. And that one, this is from the Stanford Research Institute. It said, quote, significant temperature changes are almost certain to occur by the year 2000, and these could bring about climactic changes. There seems to be no doubt that the potential damage to our environment could be severe. Pollutants, which we generally ignore because they have little local effects, CO2 and submicron particles, may be the cause of serious worldwide environmental changes. Now, that was 1968. It was 10 years later that Jimmy Carter said, we got to do something about this, and put solar panels on the White House and created our nation's first solar bank and all that other stuff. But that was also when the climate denial began. That's when the fossil fuel billionaires and the fossil fuel companies and the front groups that they funded started claiming that there was no global warming, or if there was, it was just a natural variation in solar radiation. And they've been doing that for years and years and years. You know, Mark Morano used to come on this program all the time. He was funded by the fossil fuel industry, you know, denying climate change. I finally gave up debating him because it just, you know, it was stupid. I mean, I'm talking about a decade ago we were having these debates, and then it was still considered a debate in the corporate media, bizarrely. Now they just don't even talk about it. Public Citizen published a report in 2023 titled Charging Big Oil with Climate Homicide. And they're talking about going after big oil in a very real way. Now, Rob Bonta, who is the Attorney General for California, has actually initiated, this was in 2023, a lawsuit against ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, BP, Phillips 66, and the American Petroleum Institute. But it's not for homicide. It's for public nuisance, product liability, failure to warn, pollution, impairment, and destruction of natural resources, misleading advertising and environmental marketing, and unfair competition. You know, is Nathan Hochman, the Attorney General for the District Attorney for Los Angeles, is he going to go after these oil companies? Are we going to see actual prosecutions or attempted prosecutions of executives in the fossil fuel industry? You know, inquiring minds want to know. Will our media ever begin talking about the role that the big oil, coal, and natural gas companies are playing in the destruction of Los Angeles? Will they ever? What do you think? I'm skeptical, frankly. Anyhow, stay tuned. It's 15 minutes past the hour.